Using Alakazam and Gengar on LPs that I openly admitted were done on emulators prompted a lot of people to ask me, just how did you do it? How did you manage to get those evolved forms by trade with an emulator? Well, I have answered most of these people, hopefully, but today I'm trying to put an end to the constant asking of the same question over and over. This is a tutorial on how to trade Pokémon with emulators. First, we're going to cover TGB Dual. It's a Game Boy Color emulator that's capable of playing Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. That is, in Pokémon Generations 1 and 2. And it's also capable of supporting trade in those two generations and even between those two generations. The first step is painfully obvious. If you don't have TGB Dual, just download it. You can Google it and you'll find it in 30 seconds tops. Now note that I'm not going to link you to any Pokemon ROMs. What, do you want me to get in trouble? Get in jail? It's hard to make LPs in jail, you know. Step 2 only applies if you had already started a game on another emulator. And that step is that you must transfer the save file from wherever it is right now to TGB's save folder. When you downloaded TGB Dual, there was a save folder inside the folder where you put the emulator. That is where you need to put the save file. Now it's important to note that save states aren't compatible between emulators. Each emulator has their own way of generating a save state. But save files that are created by using the in-game menu and going to the save option, those are in fact compatible with emulators. So we're going to use that fact to get your save file onto TGB Dual. So what you have to do basically is to locate the save file, which has the same file name as the ROM, but with the extension SAV. You locate that file and then you go and copy it in TGB Dual's save folder. Now once that's done, the next step is fairly easy. What you have to do is create a duplicate of the save file, but you give it the extension SA2 instead of SAV. So what this will do is that the SA2 file will be the save file that the second emulator, so to speak, reads. Step 4 is rather essential, but there are a lot of people who pass over it and can't get any further because they didn't do it. What you have to do now is that you want to customize the controls for both screens inside of TGB Dual. For that, you go in the menu options, then you choose keys, and then you put the controls that you want for both screens. For example, I use the arrows and a few letters for the first screen and the numeric keypad for the second screen. That's what I do personally, but you're free to do whatever you want. We're almost there. Now it's time to load the ROM in both screens. To load it in the first screen, you go into File, GB1, Load, and then you choose the ROM. And for the second screen, you do the same thing, except you choose GB2, Load, instead. The final step, load the in-game save files, which would be the SAV file for the first screen and the SA2 file for the second screen, and then you trade like you normally would with actual Game Boys and cartridges. That was pretty simple actually, wasn't it? That does it for TGB Dual. Now we're going to explore VBA Link, which is a Game Boy Advance emulator that's capable of playing Game Boy games, Game Boy Color games, and Game Boy Advance games. However, it's only capable of trading between Game Boy Advance games. That means only Generation 3 can trade in this emulator, which is why it doesn't completely obsolete TGB Dual. So once again, the first step is pretty duh. Download VBA Link. Now the next step is a bit different from TGB Dual because VBA Link doesn't have a save folder. Instead, it sends the save file to wherever the ROM is. So what you have to do if you started a game on another emulator, what you have to do is transfer the save file to the folder where the ROM is. If you want to move the ROM too, well, you can do it, but at the end, you have to make sure that both the ROM and the save file are on the same folder. That's the only real requirement. Step 3 is a bit different as well. Not only do you have to create a duplicate with the SA2 extension, but you have to change the original save files extension to SA1 because SAV is for vanilla VBA. VBA Link doesn't recognize SAV, so you have to change it to SA1. Step 4 hasn't really changed. You still have to customize the controls for both screens. The way it's done is a little different though. You have to go in the options menu, then choose joypad, configure, then 1 for the first screen and 2 for the second screen. So before customizing the controls, you open a first window of VBA Link, so now it's time to open the second screen. However, it's not done in the same way as in TGB Duo. It's not included in the program per se. What you have to do is to open VBA Link again. It's going to open a second window, which is going to be the one that emulates the second Game Boy Advance. And of course, afterwards, you load the ROM in both windows. And from there, all that's left to do is to load the in-game save files and trade like you normally would with actual Game Boy Advances. So that's it. I hope this tutorial has been helpful and that I didn't forget anything. If I did forget anything, please notify me and I will add a memo in the movie description. Also be sure to check the movie description if I indeed did forget something. And I would like to remind everyone that emulation is illegal unless you own the game, and even so, the only reason I and a lot of other LPers use emulators to begin with is because we want to have better image quality for when we upload our videos without having to buy obscenely expensive equipment. That's all. So with the legal jibber jabber out of the way, enjoy your evolved Pokémon!